Hello and welcome to Brimwood Farm. Well, that's a rather ominous sky. It's July and I have to say the market garden and the flower farm is still struggling. It's not that it's not warm. We've actually had the warmest temperatures going. It's been really warm, but there's just no sun. And so it's warm and it's wet and it's grey, which means we're having issues of rot because it's too moist, and it's allowing that slug and snail population to go absolutely crazy. Although I have to say, I think I'm on top of it here. I know a lot of people were having issues with slugs and snails this year, and I did earlier on in the season, but now kind of we're in July, I'm not losing stuff to slugs and snails as much. And it's partly because I've got loads of sheep's fleece, and sheep's fleece is the one thing that I have found that works amazingly well for protecting crops, whether you put it around the base of individual plants or you plant out some rows and then put a thick barrier all the way around. Slugs and snails just really don't want to crawl over the wool and the lanolin. Compared with everything else I've tried, coffee grounds, eggshells, beer traps, sheep's wool is by far my number one recommendation. The one thing that has been affecting my crops are these little toe rags. And you can see I have got a 3-strand, or is that 4? That's a 4-strand electric fence around the outside now, because these guys just jump over and they go straight for lettuces, as I mentioned last time. I did make a faux pas though, because I had to take the battery off because the fencing had run out of charge and the battery had run out. And so what happened was this fence was further out, and they came through and then they pushed this fence down. So what I've done now is I've moved this fence post right close in, so as they're trying to navigate to get over this, they're going to be shocked multiple times, and then hopefully that means they'll rethink their life choices and go away, because it's not like they haven't got lots and lots of space to go and graze. However, we all know it is a difficult season, but I want to focus on the positives, because despite the difficult growing conditions, I am still managing to grow stuff on the market garden. I am still having successes and managing to fill the CSA boxes every week with produce. And I hope as the season continues, we'll get some sun and the growing will become better and better and better. And by the end of the season, I'll have vegetables coming out of my ears. In the Polytunnel, for example, I'm probably having my best aubergine and pepper season yet. We're yet to actually get the fruit and the harvest from them, but they are doing well. We've got lots of flowers starting to appear. The plants look healthy, and the aubergines, which are interplanted with the basil's actually worked really well, and I will definitely be doing that again. I suppose the only thing that I'm slightly worried about is the lack of pollination. We haven't got as many insects around this year, and I'm hoping that actually in the Polytunnel those aubergines and those peppers are going to get pollinated properly. But my mind is eased slightly by the fact that we do have the very first trusses of tomatoes appearing. These are actually tomatoes that self-seeded from last year, where I left a lot of the tomatoes on the ground. The seeds obviously got into the soil and they came up. So the tomatoes that I have grown and transplanted are now starting to flower and are looking very healthy. But the ones that self-sowed and obviously got that early start to life have already put out some tomatoes. And that gives me reason to believe that actually pollination is happening, and we are going to get fruit and we are going to get some nice harvests from the Polytunnel. The other thing I've noticed in the Polytunnel today is that all of the ants are coming out, and I tend to find that queen ants appear when they know there's going to be a thunderstorm, because you don't want to fly off and mate and then try and build a new colony in the soil when it's rock hard. They tend to come just before there is a massive patch of rain. So I'm expecting that these skies tonight are going to open and it's going to absolutely hum down. But it'll be quite nice to get those ant colonies out of there, because as much as I water it, they seem to be remaining, and of course they are underneath the plants. And you could say aerating the soil a little bit, but also disturbing the roots. I'm not sure there's many pluses probably of having an ant colony right below where you're trying to grow something. So hopefully all those queen ants will disperse, colonies will shrink in size, and I'll try and move them on. Outside we've got success and we've got failures, but one of the successes, and they've taken ages, we're in July already, is that the onions are finally starting to swell up. It has taken them so long, but they finally obviously had enough sun, and I thought, you know, I was looking at them 6 weeks ago and thinking my onion crop is just not going to happen, but the bulbs are finally starting to swell, which is really, really good. The other thing is the garlic is also finally starting to swell. There are still some very, very small garlic cloves which aren't going to be really any good, but the bulbs are starting to get there. They are covered in a lot of rust now, so they are going to need to get pulled up fairly soon, but I'm trying to leave it as long as possible, just until those bulbs can get as big as they need to. And at the moment there's enough green on the plant, and they haven't started to flop yet, to make me know that I can leave them in for a little bit longer. But as soon as the rust kind of takes over the entire shoot, I need to pull them, because otherwise, of course, the bulb is going to suffer. To maximise the use of both the garlic and onion beds, I've tried to interplant, and it's not worked so well with the onions. Not that the interplanting hasn't worked, but unfortunately flea beetle has been terrible this year. And so you can see that I've interplanted it with a Mizuna, and the Mizuna's growing well, it's coming on, but it's being damaged so badly by the flea beetle. So the interplanting has worked in theory, it's just that the crop in the middle I can't use. If we come down a bit further, I've also done radishes. I interplanted some radishes, and you can see again this leaf is just getting absolutely annihilated. Because radish is a root crop, it may be that the roots actually are okay. If enough leaf can survive to give that root some energy, it may survive. So that might be a harvestable, but obviously that Mizuna is not harvestable because that's the leaf crop that you eat. The garlic I came to weed the other day, and I had completely forgotten that I'd interplanted or intersown some carrot. So I haven't got as far with my weeding as I was going to, because I suddenly realised I can't rip everything out. I've actually got to be a little bit careful, because there's actually quite a lot of carrot coming up in there that's really, really great. This section of the market garden is kind of the salady section, I guess. There's quite a lot of lettuces, beetroot, turnips, spring onions, chard. This morning I ripped out all of the old broad beans that were there and transplanted the next lot of lettuces out. You can see here that the beets are finally starting to bulk up in places, which is rather lovely. And then next door, this is what I mean about root crops and flea beetle. So these are 4 rows of turnips, and you can see that the leaves have been chomped, heavily destroyed, and you couldn't obviously eat that because it's disgusting, but there is enough greenery and enough leaf that it is putting stuff into the root and creating little turnips. So that should be a salvageable crop. And this end, which is the first end you come to when you come to the market garden, which maybe is why I'm always like, oh God, because it looks so terrible. Because this is my kale crop, which got eaten, and then I tried to protect it by slugs and it frazzled, and then now the pigeons have discovered it, so it's all just absolutely annihilated. But as I mentioned in the last video, I have more plants in the polytunnel growing. I'm growing them to a bigger size. I'm going to completely transplant them all out, and then I'm going to net them. I'm going to have to net them. There's no other way. Along here, I've still got a few sugar snap peas growing. They took a long time to get established, but as you can see, they are starting to flower out. They have got some nice new shoots, and I think that's one bit where the weather's helped, because normally the peas it would be too hot by now, too hot and too sunny for the peas, but actually they're managing, so we may get a little thing of sugar snap peas off there. I also discovered some very forgotten tomato plants in the corner of the polytunnel. I didn't have any space to put them out in there, and so I have thrown them into here. I've never grown tomatoes outside before, so we will just see what happens. There's only 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10. There's only like 10. See what happens. Might get some. And then further down this netting we have beans. So we've got French beans. These are very small plants, look still. They've only just been put out. And then we've got some runner beans. And then these runner beans are a little bit further on, as you can see. So they've started to whip away, and I've just noticed the very first buds are starting to appear. So I'm fairly pleased with how this frame is working. Could it have been better? Yes, of course it could, but we've had multiple animal attacks, we've had bad weather, so what can I do? I also spent an inordinate, is that a word? A long time yesterday looking for netting, because I needed to do some netting in the thing. And literally about half an hour just going, where did I put the netting? Where did I put the netting? Where on earth did I put the netting? And I just realised that I put this up, I cut the end off, and it's here. So I mean, that's great because I found it, but it's also annoying because I spent so long looking for it yesterday. And then finally, we have our row of courgettes and patipans, which again, they have taken so long to get going and start to produce flowers and fruit, but it's now happening. And I do think that this is where the weed fabric comes into its own. It suppresses the weed, but it also soaks up the sun and the heat, and they need the heat to get going. So I'm thinking that actually this has helped bring the plants along a little bit quicker than if they were just in soil somewhere. But as you can see, there's quite a few plants, there's quite a few flowers, and so I expect soon I'm going to have patipans and courgettes coming out of my ears, which is great. I can't wait. And then we come on to the cut flower patch. You can also see that I desperately need to trim the grass. I have a lot to do. And I just haven't got round to it yet, but I really must come around to just cutting it down, just to keep everything neat and clean. And also, it provides a space for bugs to hide, and slugs and snails to hide. But the clover is so pretty, and as I said earlier, actually, I haven't had a massive issue apart from that at the beginning of the season where slugs ate all my daffodils and tulips. I haven't had too much of a slug issue in the market garden, so I'm thinking that the clover is actually doing all right. It's just a shame that I don't have any bees at the moment, because I've moved the beehives to the garden, so that when I do get another colony, they'll be here right in the garden. And there's so much clover that they could be visiting. Now, as well as the market garden finally coming on, so too are the flowers. And again, they've taken so long. They should all be in flower by now. They should be full of blooms, and it's not. But the asters are starting to come into bud. As you can see, they are still that single stem, but as soon as I cut that top flower off, now it's not going to be long enough to put it in a bouquet, but it'd be nice enough just to have in a little posy or something, just in my house. I might not even sell them, but as soon as I take those off, they will start to bulk out, send up side shoots, and become nice bulky plants. The same as the nigella, the same as the cosmos is doing. And the same as the cornflower. And this is the result of what pinching does. These were actually pinched by my sheep early on in the season. But the sheep have a lot to answer for. But because they nibbled them down and they've all shot out, these snapdragons haven't flowered yet, but they are now looking at like nice bulky plants, and they will produce multiple stems of flowers, which I will then keep cutting. The yarrow is also coming in. The nasturtiums by the caravan have also gone mad. I need to do a lot of deadheading to keep them flowering and going nice. I particularly like this colour, really lovely. And there's a slightly darker one here. And then down with the raised bulb beds where I have my daffodils and tulips, they're now planted up with sunflowers and zinnias. And again, I've been pricking the tiny little zinnia heads off the top, and we're finally getting to a stage where the plants are bulking up, and soon we may actually be picking up the first zinnias. Look at these chickens. Hello guys. You're having fun over there. They love being out and about. The only problem is they lay their eggs all over the place. And I think I've found 2 or 3 nesting sites, but they've stopped laying them and they've moved on and they've gone somewhere else, and I haven't yet found that site. But nobody's broody, so I wait till I find a whole heap of eggs. So is the weather awful? Yes. Have I had issues growing? Yes. Are the sheep annoying? Yes. But I am pretty pleased with now how the season's going. I've kept on top of the weeds. It's still not weed free, but it's looking a hell of a lot better. I'm fulfilling all my CSA boxes, and I just think I'm just going to look on the positives, you know, because if I can grow like this with this horrible season, and if you're managing to grow anything at all in this horrible season, then you are winning. And we just need to await a season which is actually not as awful, and we'll do as much as we're doing this year, and we'll have a huge bounty, because then the normal growing season will happen and all of our plants will thrive. So all in all, the July garden is not shaping up to be as bad as I thought. And now just noticed that Hyacinth is on a walkabout. Hello! She only has 3 weeks left to go on her pregnancy. She should be over there. So I'm going to go and get her some food and take her back to her pen.